morning, Exeter. Thank you for gathering here in a quiet and respectful manner. I'd like to welcome you to our 9/11 assembly. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce and recognize a few people who are joining us today. Several members of our school board are with us: Dr. Hemberger, Mr. Ahrens, Mr. Miller. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Flam is also with us this morning. On the field are representatives of the Exeter Township Police Department, Chief Morris, Sergeant DeCamillo, Officer Miller, Officer Bernardi, Sergeant Bentz, and Officer Gardner. Thank you for joining us as well. 20 years ago tomorrow, on a beautiful late summer morning, very much like today, our country and world suffered the shock of terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and Flight 93's crash in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. For your parents, your teachers, and myself, each of us knows exactly where we were when we heard that news. The days that unfolded after that event brought great uncertainty. Our nation grieved, and as tragedy often does, the attacks brought us closer as a country. We are now 20 years out. As students, none of you were alive on September 11th, 2001. But all of us live in the shadow of that day. We face the real and ongoing challenge of terrorism. I encourage you, each of you, to take time to speak to your teachers and your parents about the experiences and memories of 9/11. And then, I want you to double down on your effort to understand how that day led to wars and foreign policy decisions. There were outcomes that had real consequences for real people. Sometimes those consequences were positive. Sometimes they set us back, including human suffering and lives lost. The first responders and soldiers who made great sacrifices on 9/11 and every day since then deserve that we take the time to understand, to learn, and reflect. Thank you for taking the time this morning to come together as a community to do just that. At this time, I would like to introduce Frau Combs as she leads the concert choir in the singing of our national anthem. Will you please rise?
Oh, say, can you see by dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof to the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ziegler. Mr. Ziegler is a social studies teacher at Exeter and a U.S. Army veteran.
Years ago tomorrow was a day that changed America. It was a beautiful day just like today. The weather was beautiful and I was settling into the second week of my senior year of high school. 2 weeks prior, I had gone to Harrisburg and enlisted in the United States Army as an airborne infantryman. It was a way for me to pay for college. My parents were excited, but they were less than happy with the field I chose. I assured my mom not to worry. It's not like we were at war. Fast forward to September 11th in 2001. I was just coming out of my math class. There was some buzz in the hallway about a plane that had struck one of the Twin Towers. Not knowing what was going on, we quickly rushed to our history class. And it was there where we saw the second plane hit the South Tower. It was like the world stopped. Everything stopped. Classes stopped. The bells rang. We moved from one class to the other, but all we did was watch the television, watch the news, watch the third plane hit the Pentagon. And then, of course, the reports of the fourth plane, United 93, that crashed in Pennsylvania. Everything had changed. My senior year of high school was a lot different. My time in the Army took me to Korea, Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and from Fort Bragg, I deployed twice to Iraq to fight the global war on terror. Fighting in Iraq, we lost 2 service members in our unit. Staff Sergeant Zachary Wadler was killed February 6th of 2005, and Sergeant Pritch Terry was killed a month later. For the past 20 years, we've still been fighting the global war on terror. And even though we left Afghanistan a couple of weeks ago, we still have military members in the Middle East, Syria, Iraq, Africa, and all throughout the world. Remembering 9/11 20 years later gives us an opportunity to honor our first responders too. First responders on 9/11 rushed into the towers in the Pentagon. Of the 2,996 people who were killed, 343 of them were firefighters, 23 were police officers, and 37 were Port Authority officers. Since that day, firefighters, police officers, and first responders who responded to those attacks have been dying because of toxic exposure at ground zero. They rushed in even though they knew those towers were probably going down. So, after 9/11, we were told, never forget. And that was the slogan. And 20 years later, we are still fighting the global war on terror. We barely see it unless there's some tragic event like 2 weeks ago. So please take the day, talk to your parents, talk to someone who was alive on 9/11, and listen to their stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ziegler. I would like to introduce Emily Holliday, and she plays Please Reflect on the Meaning of 9/11. Thank you, Emily. We are honored to have members of the Exeter Township Police Department with us this morning, representing their ranks and all first responders who were so critical in 9/11. Many lives were saved that day due to the heroic and selfless actions of our first responders. It is my pleasure to introduce Chief Morris.
Good morning, Exeter High School. Very good morning. All right, outstanding. My name is Chief Wendell Morris. I'm the Chief of Police here in the township. I'd like to thank the school staff for giving me the opportunity to talk today. Almost 3,000 people were killed during the 9/11 terrorist attacks, which triggered major U.S. initiatives to combat terrorism. The anniversary of 9/11 is a time to honor those who have served since 9/11 and those who have lost their lives on that fateful day and in the years after, battling terrorism across the globe. Since 9/11, approximately 196,000 men and women have served in our country's military service. The Exeter Township Police is honored to have numerous former service members in our ranks. I'd like to recognize one of them today, Sergeant Rocco DiCamillo. Sergeant DiCamillo was born and raised in West Reading. He graduated from Wyomissing Area High School in 1992 and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he served for 29 years, retiring this year as a Sergeant Major. Sergeant DiCamillo attended the City of Reading Police Academy in 1994 and was recognized as a marksman for firearms. He began his law enforcement career in 1995 as a part-time officer with the Borough of Sinking Spring. Later in 1995, he was hired as a full-time police officer with the Phoenixville Borough Police Department. He was appointed as a Chester County detective with the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Drug Task Force in 1996, where he worked in an undercover capacity. In 1997, he joined the ranks of the Exeter Township Police Department, and in 1998 through 2000, Sergeant DiCamillo was sworn in as a Berks County detective and was temporarily assigned to the Berks County District Attorney Narcotics Enforcement Team. Sergeant DiCamillo volunteered to serve in the Exeter Township School District as a drug abuse resistance education instructor, also known as DARE, from 1998 to 2012. He also volunteered as a Youth Aid Panel Liaison Officer and the Community Youth Aid Panel, in the Community Youth Aid Panel. Sergeant DiCamillo deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom in June of 2005 with the United States Marine Corps Military Transition Team, where he served as a company advisor with the newly formed Iraqi Army. He participated in combat operations in Habanaya and Arbor areas until March of 2006. Sergeant DiCamillo returned to Iraq during September of 2006 with the United States Marine Corps Police Transition Teams. He served as an operations chief and trained approximately 1,400 Iraqi police officers in Al-Anbar province. He participated in combat operations in Iraq until March of 2007. He later mobilized under presidential recall orders in support of Operation Enduring Freedom in 2011 and deployed to Nimruz province, Afghanistan. His unit conducted partner security and stability operations with combat troops from the Royal Grenadian Army during their deployment. His personal military decorations include the Legion of Merit, Bronze Star Medal, Meritorious Service Award with Gold Star, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, and Military Outstanding Volunteer Service Medal. His law enforcement awards include the FBI Director Certificate, Meritorious Service Award, Life Saving Medal, Exceptional Duty Medal, Honorable Service Medal, along with numerous other service awards and letters of commendations. He is married and has 2 sons. Please join me in giving a round of applause to Sergeant DiCamillo and all the veterans for their service to our country and the citizens who call Exeter Township home.
Thank you, Chief Morris. Congratulations, Sergeant DiCamillo. Thank you to the officers who are here as well for your commitment to Exeter. At this time, I would like to introduce Mrs. Selke and the Exeter Township High School Band. Thank you, Eagles, for your attention this morning. I would like to offer a few recognitions before we depart. I'd like to thank the Exeter Township Police Department again for being here. Thank you, Mr. Ziegler, for your service and sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Thank you to Mrs. Lake and the Emergency Services Club for their help in decorating for today's ceremony. I'd like to express our appreciation to our musicians for making our ceremony better this morning. We had help from the members of the National Honor Society as well as we got into the stadium. Our district grounds team and tech department were critical in our setup. And lastly, I'd like to thank Ms. Hartman for her work in organizing today's ceremony. Please spend some time reflecting on the memories and meaning of 9/11. Talk to your parents and your teachers to gain an understanding of the day's significance. Be appreciative of the sacrifices that others have made on our behalf. Please wait until your row is dismissed and report back to first period. As you re-enter the building, please make sure you're masked. Thank you, Eagles.